Hey, how you doing? Welcome to my ramble on my Endgame Ironman. Although I do know that people describe Endgame, mid-game, late game differently, so apologies in advance if, as we go through this, you start to think I'm not an Endgame Ironman. But for me at least, with just a few items left and closing on Grandmaster and being maxed already, I consider myself an Endgame Ironman, aka slowly running out of goals. I've been playing Ironman for about 6 years now. This is my first Ironman account. I think back around the time Next came out, which might be 2022 from memory, I had a maxed Ironman, which wasn't this account. It was about 500 million XP. And I de-ironed it around that time because I think I'd spent 2 or 3 weeks at Next and the meta hadn't fully developed yet. And I was sick of doing kind of group mass content. And in hindsight, I was pretty lucky. I had a helmet in 1300 next, but it just didn't feel very good. And it didn't feel like the sort of progress I wanted to make as work was getting busier. And so I chose to de-iron. And after that, I played a regular account for about a year before starting Hardcore Ironman. And that's where this account came along. This was the third Hardcore Ironman attempt I had. It made it the furthest. It made it to about 2150 total. And then I died trying to do a combat achievement at Araxor that I hadn't really practiced. And yeah, just kind of that lack of knowledge on the mechanics led to a bit of an early and preventable death. But after that, I kind of poured myself into it. I'd already done some things like the Bofo grind. So as an Iron Man, I was able to run off and do Quiver and Inferno quite quickly. And from there, just had a lot more fun with it and realized I'd definitely missed the Iron Man mode. So this account is about 2.5 years old at this point, so it's come along quite nicely. And I'm working on some of the longer burn goals I've ever worked on. So I'm working on Best in Slot gear at the moment, where I'm only kind of really missing a Twisted Bow, Missouri Chaps, and an Imbued Heart. There are some other kind of ad hoc niche items that I'd like to chase as well, but for now, those three are the big ones. And I'm kind of currently through, or midway through, the Chambers grind, which is going interesting. I'm kind of paying for past sins, I guess. I also have goals to get Grandmaster. I'm about 13 combat achievements away from that at the moment. I think 7 of those are Grandmaster, but they're all pretty straightforward. Just being a bit lazy with it and decided that if I'm grabbing a Twisted Bow anyway, and it's a top priority item for me, then Grandmaster can wait until after that. So just pick up the Twisted Bow and then have a bit of a more reclined Grandmaster run. But we'll talk about that in a bit later. I'm also working on 1 billion total experience. One of the reasons I do like Iron Man, outside of having to do kind of all the content, is seeing my rank go up. So I think, for example, I'm about rank 3,600, and I'm looking forward to getting that into the top 2,000 at some point, which naturally ties into the goal of getting 1 billion experience. And it'll be interesting to see kind of if I develop any motivation to get some 200 mils. I would have thought something like Fire Making or Hunter would be good ones to start with. They're pretty high XP an hour, and they add resources to an account, or also an Iron Man at least. And I like that. I'm a big fan of stacking resources on an Iron Man, so something a bit more appealing there versus, I don't know, slamming 200 mil agility, for example. And then another kind of smaller goal I have is to get all the dusted raid pets. And yesterday I picked up the metamorphic dust, and that's why I've got this little guy following me. And so that just means in terms of finishing off the dusted pet goal, I just got to grab the sanguine dust from hard mode top. But really won't be spending much time doing hard modes until I've finished Grandmaster. That's the highest priority at the moment, grabbing the Twisted Bow and finishing Grandmaster. So at the moment I'm kind of midway through this Chambers grind. I'll pull up when I get to the bank and I run through the clog a little bit more, but basically the short and long of it is I've done 1,000 regulars. I've done just over 300 challenge mode raids. and I have about 64 purples. I used to be pretty meticulous about tracking the purples per point, and for a very long time I was, I think, 6 or 7 purples behind a rate. However, these last 4 days I've had quite a few purples. I don't know if I can bring this up. It's kind of clipped on the side, but I've done about 30. Yeah, you can't. I'm gonna try moving it. I've done about 30 CMs, and I've had 6 purples, which is kind of crazy. You're expecting a purple every 13 raids or so. So closing that gap a bit when it comes to the ratio. But when I finished the 1000 chambers, I just deleted the plugin that tracked the points and the expected purples and things like that. It was just getting a bit too toxic, and it's hard enough focusing on a long grind like Twisted Bow, where it takes you about 300 to 350 hours, let alone worrying about having enough purples to satisfy your RNG ego, I guess. On top of the, so I'm 64 purples, and from all that I've got 10 of the 12 uniques. I'm missing the Twisted Bow and the Elder Ball, which is a little bit unfortunate. It would have been nice to have been missing a mega rare and maybe a bit more of a casual purple, like a buckler. But there you go. It is how it is. And yeah, I think I have 2 code eyes as well. So a little bit short on the mega rare rolls too. I think at 64 you're coming up on expecting 6, definitely 5. And so just to have 2 is a bit of a shame. But as with the purple RNG evening out, I'm sure at some point I'll get a bit of a run where I grab 2 or 3 megas in a short duration. And with a bit of luck, there'll be the Twisted Bow and the Animal. If I get the Twisted Bow first, great. I'll run off and I'll do the Grandmaster achievements. So there's about 7 of those to do. And then 6 more ad hoc ones. I think most of the non-Grandmaster achievements that are left are Shellbane Griffin. Just haven't had a Slayer task for that yet. And then once Grandmaster's finished, I'll move on to a bit of skilling, if I'm being honest. I'd really like to sit down and just do a whole heap of Slayer. It'd be cool to do that with Lorva and a Zuckhelm. And then it'd be really nice to also just do raids casually whenever friends want to. Whereas at the moment, it's a bit kind of awkward because I'm really committed to this Twisted Bow grind. And, mostly I do that solo, but they want to do other things like Toa and Top. But as soon as Grandmaster's done, happy to jump in and do those kind of as a priority. I'll do Toa and Tops, they come up, hard mode Tops. And then in my own downtime, I'll spend it doing Slayer and working on base 20 mils probably. Because that all ties into my broader goal of 1 billion experience, as well as working on the Imbued Heart. And I'm really looking forward to that. I'm very excited just to slay and to skill, and just to work through all the resources I've accumulated on the account. I'm a big fan of stacking things, and I really enjoy Herblore and Ironman, for example. So all of that's very appealing. So from a skill perspective, I just run through them kind of as a catalogue, but feel free to skip forward to when I run through the bank and look at combat achievements as well as the collection log. So about 24 million experience attack, 73 million experience strength, 25 million experience defense, and 72 mil experience range. Prayers at 16 mil. Prayers something I do passively through Slayer. And then whenever I do Hunter Rumors too, that accumulates, I think it's about 20,000 prayer XP an hour as well, so that stacks up over time. Magic's coming up on 50 mil. Runecraft's at 15 mil. Magic's at 50 mil, nearly. And Runecraft's at 15. And then Construction's still just after max, 13 mil. Construction's an interesting one. When I bump that up to 20 mil, through all the planks I've accumulated from PVM and from Chambers, that should catapult me in ranks. I think Construction is quite uncompetitive. Understandably, it doesn't really add any value to the account post-max. Hit points, I'm nearly 84 million experience. Agility, I'm 15 million. herbs at 35 mil. I think I've got enough herb banked for 45 mil, but at this stage I just want to stack all my herbs until I've got 50 million banked. And then I'll send all that, and then I might just spend a year, 2 years accumulating all my herb supplies with the view of doing another 50 million session at some point to bring myself up to 100 mil. But definitely really enjoy seeing my herb stack grow. It's really enjoyable, and then yeah, dumping it all's a heap of experience. It's quite chilled. I can do it when I'm outside walking or when I'm commuting to work, things like this. Thieving's only at 17 million. That's a pretty quick one. Crafting's at 25 million. Fletching's at almost 19 million. Slayer's at 20 million. Hunter's at 27 million. Mining at 15. Smithing at 15. Fishing's at 18 million. Cooking's at 24 million. Fire making's at 15 million. That's another quick one that I'll look forward to doing after Grandmaster a bit. Woodcutting's almost 20 million. Farming's at 65. I've slowed down on farming quite a lot. I used to take that quite seriously. But whilst I've been doing chambers, I haven't been doing my tree runs. I haven't been doing herbs. And I actually had a bit of a shortage on tree runs. I think because I was spending so much time not doing things like Tob and not being super diligent about contracts, just my stack dwindled down. And post Tebow, I'm looking forward to doing a whole heap of things on the high scores when it comes to boss kill counts and keeping them nice and clean and round. And so doing things like Musfa, doing things like Zora will help replenish those stockpiles. And finally, sailing at 13 mil. I'm also super excited to do some more sailing. I'll have to grab the ad hoc items I need slowly through Slayer tasks, doing worms and frost dragons, but I'm really keen to do the new trawling methods. I think the meta's slowed down a little bit and it's kind of stabilized, so I'm really keen to collect stacks of the fish just to use for PVM, but also keen to grab the dragon salvaging hooks and just spend some time salvaging as well. That's quite enjoyable and play. I've got another account I play on the side sometimes, so that's a nice activity to do when I'm focusing on other accounts. But yeah, more broadly, the goals are to grab base 20 mils. I'd be able to do that this year if I grabbed the Twisted Bow and Grandmaster in the next kind of 2 months. But if not, you know, it's something I can grab next year. I definitely won't get 1 billion experience until next year anyway, so I guess there's no real rush on that. But I'll just finish this lap and I'll head over to the bank. I guess the last thing, just quickly, so I might do another few laps, is we just bring over the high scores. One of the things I really enjoy seeing is number go up, I guess, but having clean kill counts. So the boss high scores are a bit of a mess for me at the moment. And I've got to work on cleaning those up, and, you know, naturally bingos tend to ruin these a little bit. But for example, looking at Seracnus at 1,000, Duke at 1,000, Chambers at 1,000, they just look really clean. And so it's a bit of a personal OCD goal to go on a bit of a rampage after grabbing Twisted Bow and just clean up as many of these to a base level as possible. And then when I'm, you know, doing a particular goal, maybe I'm doing Toa, for example, whenever I finish that goal, just round up the kill count, especially because I have max gear. There's no pressure to go and do another piece of content. Just round up the kill count to the nearest 100, the nearest 250, or the nearest 1,000. I think that'll be super fulfilling. So for example, once I have the Twisted Bow, I'd finish off the CMs to a certain point, but then I'd go and, I don't know, send 911 Zora. You know, I'd go and finish off 350 Musfa, things like that. I don't know, just personally very satisfying. And yeah, you know, it gives me another thing to do on the account. So just, you know, a bit of personal goal, a bit of fun. So yeah. All right, let's head to the bank. The bank's a bit of a mess at the moment because I've kind of plotted out where I'm going to put some of my gear, and I clapped some tabs into a junk tab. So it's not as clean as it should be, and I haven't got it quite into a space where I'm happy with it. But, you know, we'll get there slowly. So at the moment on the front tab, this is where I normally keep whatever I'm working on passively when I'm AFK. So at the moment I'm just cutting some magic logs, although I'm conscious not to cut too many because Veil Totems is a pretty good experience. And then I used to have a kind of a clue stack here and a brimstone key stack. But I used this up recently for a bit of dopamine. So there's that. But normally I'd have the niche talismans just down here underneath the crystal shards, and then I'd have a brimstone key stack, and then I'd have all my clues stacked up here. Maybe I'll start stacking them now we'll have a look at them next video or next ramble. And I just keep some of my favorite pets up here that I use for skilling. I think I have about 16 or 17 pets. Maybe it's 15 though. And then gear-wise, as I said, best in slot melee is there. We'll see it in the clog, but I got quite lucky at next. I'm missing Missouri Chaps as spoken about, and I had to get one more piece of Armadil to fortify everything. I could fortify this right now, but I want to keep the Armadil helmet for clue steps. For mage, we're best in slot minus the arcane as an upgrade for the ward. And we're also missing the imbued hearts we spoke about. Missing the Oathplate helmet as well. I'm not sure what all these placeholders are for. This is the Venator ring, which I'll get from Leviathan. I'm about 450 Leviathan with no ring rolls, so that might be a bit of a grind, but I actually don't mind going dry there because I'll be able to use that time to stockpile some more Awakener's Orbs, which I'll use when I come to do Awaken Levy, and it's just a bit of a cushion in case I suck, because it has been a few months since I've cleared Awaken Levy on the other account. This is Twisted Bow, obviously. Not quite sure what this is. Yeah, I'm not sure all these caps. I think this is the gap I put for Elysian and Spectral, perhaps. Otherwise, pretty generic gear at this point. I'm not missing too much. I'm missing an SGS. This is for Inquisitors. This will be where the bow sits. Not sure what that's going to be. Again, I'm not sure why I put all these caps in. I'm sure I had a reason at the time. This is for the wieldy weapons, the Dragon Hunter wand. But pretty stacked for an Ironman. Definitely the furthest to progress an Ironman in terms of gear. This is a tab I quite like. I like stacking things, so this is good fun to watch it grow. I've got a whole heap of potions, which is great. I really enjoy stacking herbs and seeing those potion stacks rise. Especially post next, having all these brews and restores is just a really great outcome. I can use them liberally wherever I want. The only thing that's kind of winding me up at the moment is my blood and soul rune stack are quite low. I've done a lot of chambers. And whilst I'm super grateful to have the scythe and the shadow to do that, it is just a bit annoying seeing the stack so low. So, we're moving house in the future and I'm starting a new job and the commute's going to be, about an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe, there and back. So I'll use that downtime definitely at the start to just replenish some of these runes. And I have, I've got 440 mil nearly. I think about 100 mil is about 250k runes. So in a worst case scenario, I could dump a bunch of cash to replenish them. But I'm also, it's kind of that OCD around. I like seeing things stack up. I like seeing the cash stack up. So, and I also kind of want to get a crystal crown. But we'll just wait and see. It depends where we land with using the scythe and the shadow at Twisted Bow, at the Twisted Bow grind. Once I finish T-Bow, I started just going for chaps. I don't really have much use for those mega res, and I guess I've got hard top goals, but definitely be a lot less intense versus what I'm doing today, and that'll allow me to net profit souls and bloods as I do my commute rune crafting in Zaya. This is for the imbued heart, that space. And then, yeah, kind of plenty of arrows and bolts. I've got about 3,200 bolts in the quiver, so we're in a pretty good spot when it comes to supplies. And that kind of allows me to do fun things with my herb stacks. I can just grow them to huge amounts and drop them all at once. That's fun. So this is kind of work in progress. I need to get a few more items before I clean it up. But this is my kind of teleport tab. using for clues, and then I kind of have some glories that I just recharge and recycle, kind of casually fishing for the eternal. But yeah, definitely I'm missing the Tome of Water and one more elemental stave. So with the herb and the resources tab, I juggle this around quite a lot. My kind of idea going forward with this is only to keep kind of products I need to process in here at a secondary level. So not at the primary level, if that makes sense. So this is kind of counterintuitive, but the herbs are technically something that needs processing on a primary level, and that becomes something secondary, like a herb, which then becomes a potion. Or a bit like ore is not in this tab, but the bars are, because the bars I need to process. The ores I technically need to process too, but it's a primary resource. But I keep the seeds here because this is where my farming gear is too, so it's just easier to pull it out and then grab the other seeds as needed. But yeah, pretty generic. I've kind of ran through some of my bars recently, so the stack's quite low. And the herbs, you can see which ones I kind of went through recently. I went through the irits, toadflax, and the raynars. So kind of just restacking these, and it'd be nice to use up all these seeds and then convert this into 50 mil herb lore and go from there. This kind of skilling outfits and Slayer tab. This is a bunch of junk. This is my loot tab, which I'm trying to keep clean. I've got to bring over a bunch of stuff from this final tab into here. I was messing around with layouts and stuff like that. But again, hopefully you can see kind of primary resources. So I've got to process these by cleaning them, and they become a secondary resource. Got to cut all these gems, and they become a secondary resource. I have to smelt this ore, then it becomes a secondary resource. You kind of get the idea. Same thing with the d'hide. And then, yeah, some of the more generic-y gear bits sit in here as well. Or if I don't know what to do with that, I'll just slap it in here. What was interesting was I think I was about 50 loop keys unbalanced, and interesting seeing that come back to 9. The law of RNG balancing out. And then, yeah, I mean, this is the clue tab. Pretty boring. And then this has a bunch of stuff that probably should sit in this kind of gear PVM loop tab, but I've just been messing around with it a little bit. Bit messy. Bunch of cut gems here, for example. Some dupe ancestral. Cool. And then from a clog perspective, I'll just flick through these slowly, and I might call out anything that's memorable. Got quite lucky at Hydra. Araxor is lucky stroke on rate. Callisto 1400 for the hilt from RTO, which was a bit of a struggle at the time, so I went over rate on all of them. Sorry about that. Cerberus, just over rate, that's fine. Nothing to see here. Ziliana, I think I got the ACB just before 500, so I just rounded it up and left it there. Court Beast haven't really touched. Got to grab a Narchus ring from DKs at some point. It is interesting how previously on Ironman he spent a lot of time at DKs, but nowadays you just go there once or twice to grab some rings, and that's that. Doom, this was fun. So I've been quite lucky on release ever since Yama. I seem to be getting quite lucky. So this was a good grind. Very easy grind for me, at least. So yeah, that was, thank you, Jagex, for that. Duke could have been 1,000, just missing the eye, but been quite lucky with all the DT2 pets. I think I'm just missing Whisperer. Fight Caves. Colosseum's fun. I've seen one Ralos. I actually saw the Ralos on my first reinforcements soul attempt. I had a really bad invocation spread, and on top of that I was super nervous to have Ralos on the line as well. I'm pretty sure my hand was shaking, and I just kind of planked within the first 20 seconds. But I had volatility 2 on. You have the reinforcement and you have the bees, so everything's exploding all at once. It's quite a lot to deal with. And then on top of that, I had think, Doom 2. So I could only make 10 mistakes. So it was just a terrible spread of invocations at the end of the day. And so I wasn't surprised I died, but ashamed to see a Ralos go to waste. But this is fun content, and after I have a Twisted Bow and the Missouri Chaps, and it'll be fun to go back and get 100 kill count, and a bit of luck I'll get a Ralos by then. Gauntlet, I got quite lucky. This is a hardcore, so that was nice to get lucky. Grador, on rate, bit lucky. A bit of Guardians, quite lucky here to have 2 hammers. Huey, it's kind of samey, seem to roll the tome quite a lot. Then 11 Inferno. KQ, KBD, Kriara. It's, a nice enough spread where I could make the Missouri, but I'll have to go back and get another 100 kill count and try and get one more piece. Krill was an interesting one. I think I had 350 kill count, and all I had was 4 steam staves and 1 spear, and it took to the 350 kill count to get the spear, and then between 350 and 400 I grabbed 2 staves and a hilt. That was interesting. Levy, I had a Verdus Mask from here. I think the top came from Vard and the bottom came from Duke, but still here trying to roll the Vestige, and quite lucky with the pen. So it'll be nice. I'll be able to, if I go for the axe, which I'm going to do at some point, it'll be nice because all my DC2 logs are all green apart from Whisperer. And the axe will be a nice grind to go for because the new leagues, which are about 2 weeks away, have that nice Yama reskin for the axe, which looks crazy good. Moons. Actually, I think I lost my Macawaddles in the wilderness, which is a bit sad. But I got the CA, so that's all that mattered. Next, very lucky. I think it's a drop every 350. So I'm supposed to have, what was that, 6? And I have 9. From memory, I had Van Braces by 100. This is all trios and stuff. It's probably 20, 30 masses in here. All trios or quads. A lot of it in the next free-for-all world, which is a pain, but I think I spent a good 2 weeks just solidly sending it in October last year. I think going into that degenerate sending session, I had a horn and Van Braces. And during that session, I grabbed a bunch of duplicates, as well as the helm and the legs. And then during a bingo, I've kind of done 2 back-to-back bingos recently, but during the first bingo from the back-to-back session, we were doing some necks and I pulled the Torva plate body. And, that was crazy. I can't believe I finished Torva on an Ironman. So looking forward to turning it into Blorva once I get the Twisted Bow. Haven't done much next. This is something once I get Grandmaster and once I've spent some time doing some skilling, I'll really spend some time doing some PNM. PNM's really fun. It's a lot shorter now. When you die, you get put outside. Just all these nice quality of life features. And so doing a bit of that ready for Raids 4. Musfa, I went a bit dry here. I think I had a streak. I was like 3 times dry for a shard. And then they kind of just all caught up towards the end, which is nice. But a nice boss, you get lots of supplies, so I can't complain really. I think I did this in like December last year. I got like a rev weapon. I went dry for the rev weapon, and then it was a crossbow, which was great, worth going dry for. And then I went straight into PNM to grab the, not PNM, Phantom Musfa, to grab the Benedict bow. Serapnis, but lucky with the pet there. Then a little bit of Shalbane, but this is before the CAs came out. Just kind of run through the rest of these. Kind of Bard Orvis, went on rate for the old tour. Venenatus, it kind of went 1600 for the gem, which wasn't great, but a decent amount of red spiders eggs at least. Calvarion, I went about 1090 for the blade. And then just Warcath, Whisperer, on rate. Todd, Yama, got quite lucky on release, got the pet on like 6 kill count, and then got lucky with the armor pieces. And that's about it. And then from a raids perspective, I'm not going to bother with the clues and minigames because I'm not really a heavy clogger. But 1,000 Cox, 321 CMs. I think in my first 250, 260, 70 CMs, I had 1 kit. Then I got a 2nd kit recently. And then yesterday I had a crazy day. I had the dust. And then I also had 3 purples. I had a back-to-back hat into a DHCB, and then I grabbed a Dex just before the end of the day. But yeah, 2 mega rare rolls. Really excited to get another one, hopefully. I've got another week off before my next job starts, my new job. And I'm trying to do 10 challenge modes a day. Just so I don't burn out, but I still make a decent dent in the progress. And my kind of goal was to get to 66 purples. But given the fact that I've had 6 in just 30 raids, I think I'll beat that goal. So I'm trying to get to 69 purples now, which is double the drop rate for a T-bow or an Aldermall specifically on its own. So it'd be nice to grab one of those by then. And, you know, I'm really hoping it's Twisted Bow so I can just crack on with the other goals. And I have a bit of dread around getting an Aldermall, which is great. I need that anyway, but then I'll be literally sat at chambers that I'm green logged, which is kind of crazy to think about. Whereas if I got the T-bow, I do the Aldermall casually when I do other CMs with friends, but I'm not going to sit here and wait for it. Tob, quite lucky. I had a Scythe at 84. To be fair though, my other Ironman, I think, did about 700, 800 top without a Scythe, so kind of balances out. But definitely I'm suffering at chambers for my luck at Tob and Toa on this account. So it'd be nice to grab a Grazi. I really want a Grazi for General Slayer, even though you don't really use it in many places anymore. And Sang, I'm kind of another here or there about. And it'd be nice to grab both the Sang kits. I quite like Top though. I'm looking forward to doing that with friends after T-bow. Toa, super lucky, probably the luckiest place on the account, which is nice because I never really enjoyed Toa at the start, but once you've got a shadow and once you get a lot better at the game, Toa becomes a lot more fun. But definitely a raid that I prefer to do with friends. I don't really enjoy doing that with a solo approach. Although 2 of my shadows were from solos. My first purple was a Fang. I think it was a 370 raid. And then a few raids later in the 370 I pulled my first shadow. So I had a Fang and a shadow before anything else, which is just the perfect setup for raiding really at Toa. And then yeah, over time I just seem to be pulling shadows non-stop. One more purple and I'll hit double drop rate for the chaps. But you know, nothing to complain about here, just they'll come when they come, and at least they're a relatively common item. It's not like I'm sat here hunting a shadow, so no complaints from me. And yeah, that's a wrap. I'll just quickly show the combat achievements, but that's the account. So yeah, pretty close. If I go on to tasks, incomplete, so a bunch of Shalbane stuff. And then KQ, I've got to do KQ. I don't have the flail and I couldn't be bothered just kicking it while the Thrall kills it, so I've just left it for now. 2 Hydra tasks. I can knock this out whenever I want, but again, it's kind of one of those convenience things. So I'm grabbing a Twisted Bow anyway. Might as well just do the Hydra time with the TCB and the T-bow. There's no rush doing it, right? So there's that. But I do have a Hydra task stored. I just need to grab the stupid Shalbane task first. Jad will be super easy once I have a T-bow. I could do it before then, just again, convenience. Leviathan, I think I've done like 15 attempts on the account with a bow with bow pipe, and I just didn't really click, didn't enjoy it. So I know I can do it with the T-bow, so I'll just wait for the T-bow. The Yammer contract I haven't really done before, so that'll be interesting to learn. And then the Doom one, this will be super easy with the T-bow. And like a Halley, so there's less kind of splats all over the floor. And then Doom Race, this is an interesting one. I spent like 8 hours sending this with a ZCP and a Scythe. And I just didn't get the RNG I needed. I think I got closer to like a 730 or a 740 probably. Or I was on pace for that before I left. But again, just T-bow makes this so much easier. It removes all the RNG. You're not messing around with the bird pipe trying to stay as close as possible. You're not, you know, if you miss a ZCP, it's not the end of the world. Just all these things. You don't have to bring dragon knives. So just, you know, using the sweaty tech where you tank the shield bash. This just becomes very free. And again, just why burn myself out trying to do these CAs and grab Grandmaster? And I can just burn myself out trying to get a T-bow and then leisurely stroll forwards and grab the GMs that way. But super looking forward to doing kind of post-GM Slayer with Blorver and all that. Anyway, plans are kind of to do this every month or two. And yeah, keep you updated on the goals, but also to use it kind of as a scrapbook for myself to see what my goals were at the time and where I was at. And I guess a fun little Easter egg for anyone that watched all the way to the end. I've used the name Appa for a while, but I think I watched a guy called Attaway, who has an absolutely sick Ironman. He made his first Ramble end of last year, and his name was Adaway, and I went, hey, Ada sounds like Appa, so I changed my name to Appaway, and I quite like it. So shout out Adaway. Anyway, take it easy. I'll see you next time.